Rabbi Mordechai Becher here with Gateways Organization. Shalom Aleichem. I hope everyone is staying safe, staying inside, and staying sane. And regarding the staying sane, maybe that's where we can help. First of all, we're in a terrible time of uncertainty. It's a time where everyone is nervous. We are scared. People are quarantined in their houses. You all know there's a lot to deal with. So the first thing to realize is that having normal human emotions is not an aveira. It is okay to feel nervous. It is acceptable to be scared. We know this from a number of places. There's a fascinating Gemara in Kiddushin in which Rabbi Bar Huna, he basically wanted to test his son to see how respectful his son was of him. So he took some of his son's best silk garments and ripped them up in front of him. The Gemara asks, how can you do such a thing? Lifnei iver lo titei michshol. He is placing a stumbling block before the blind. His son will get angry at his father and will treat him with disrespect, which is, as we know, an aveira. So the Gemara says, demachile, he forgave him. In other words, ahead of time, he forgave his son for the disrespect to himself. All nice, all well and good. But the commentaries ask, but what about the sin of anger? It won't help for the father to be moichel, to forgive the son. It only helps to forgive his son for the disrespect towards the father. But for the sin of anger, it won't help to forgive him. So Reb Shlomo Fisher, Shlita, my Rebbe, says, fascinating answer. He says, because there is no sin in having a normal human emotion, meaning someone takes something expensive of yours and in front of you rips it to shreds and you feel anger, that's okay. Now, you're not allowed to act on the anger, break his nose or anything like that, but to feel anger at such a time, that's not a sin. That's normal. To feel scared, to feel somewhat depressed. The Rambam writes in an extraordinarily honest Igeres, one of his letters, that when his brother David died, his brother David was very close with his brother David, both in emotionally and in learning and in many, many ways. And he says he could barely get out of bed for a long time because he was so depressed at the death of his brother. Every time he saw something in his brother's handwriting, he'd burst into tears. So, first of all, we should not feel guilty if we are feeling afraid. We should not feel guilty if we sometimes are a little angry or depressed, etc. The Gemara tells us, Lo nitna Torah lamalachei hashares. The Torah was not given to angels. It was not given to robots. It was given to human beings with a full gamut of human emotion. Now, we also crave certainty. We like to know why something is happening. We like to know, and we think we can understand why things are happening. But uncertainty, I would say, is a central part of the human condition. We have a lot of uncertainty in many areas of life. David HaMelech writes that he says the following, Zmirois hayuli chukecha. Your chukim, your statutes, was mirois, were songs for me. And the Medrash, the Sifri actually in Parshas Korach, says a fascinating idea. It says that David HaMelech said this when he was in the moments of stress and danger pursued by Shaul HaMelech. He had tragedies later on with his sons. We know that the life of David HaMelech was very difficult. And one of the things he says is, Mirois hayuli chukecha. Your statutes, your chukim, made me sing. Type of interesting sort of. So I heard from Baruch Zaychik, who quoted from Yosel Zundel of Salant, an interesting pshat explanation of this, in which he says that just in the same way as chukim are not understandable to the human mind, the statutes of the Torah, there are many halachas that we don't really understand them, but we actually delight in doing them because we know they are the will of Hashem. So David HaMelech said the same is true with life. There are elements of life which are chukim, meaning beyond my understanding. There are things that happen in life which are like chukim, like shatnas, like para aduma. There are many halachas. We do those mitzvahs with joy, with happiness, with an acceptance that they are the will, the rotzen Hashem. So David HaMelech said, what gave me joy in times of life which I didn't understand what was going on, where things were very stressful and difficult and dangerous and depressing, etc., he says, you're chukim. I understood that, you know what? Just like shatnez is a chok, which I don't understand, and just like paraduma is a chok, which I don't understand, what's happening to me in life is a chok, and I don't understand it. But embedded in our Jewish genes is a joy in doing the mitzvahs, in fulfilling Ratzon Hashem, and that's also accessible even when life is a chok, life is a statue. Having said that, there are a couple of ways that we deal with this type of uncertainty. No one is qualified today to say that A is happening because of B. In order to do that, you need nevuah, you need prophecy. We don't have prophets today. So we can't say that A is happening because of B. We cannot even say that if you do B or C, this will be okay. We can't provide such guarantees unless we are prophets. So you have to be a Novi, and we don't have Nevi'im. But what do we have? We have tremendous Chochmas HaTorah. We have Torah knowledge, and the Torah gives us guidance in how to act in these type of times. So first of all, my favorite is Reb Simcha Bunim of Pshischa. Anyone who's been to any Gateways program has probably heard me quote him. And my favorite story about him gives us an amazing strategy for how to cope with these times. He is walking on the banks of a river, the Weissel River, somewhere near Danzig. He was the CEO of a lumber company before he became a full-time Rebbe. And he's walking with some Talmidim, some students, and one of them slips in the mud, slides into the river, and he's being carried along by the current. And they're running along next to him. No one knows what to do because none of them could swim. The guy in the river has basically given up. He's just letting himself be carried away. So Rav Simcha Bunim, and excuse my Yiddish, not very good, he yells at the guy in the river, Losen grust zum Leviathan. Give my regards to the Leviathan. Give my regards to the Leviathan, the mystical sea creature. Now, this is not very helpful. Telling someone who's drowning regards to Nemo is not going to help. But in this case, after Reb Simcha Bunim said regards to Leviathan, something changed in the demeanor of this guy's face. And he started thrashing around more in the water, and he made it close enough to the shore that they could pull him out of the river. And the Talmidim asked Reb Simcha Bunim, what were you thinking? I mean, it worked, but what were you thinking? He said, Pasuk says in Yeshaya, Ki b'simcha seitzeu. When you have, normally we translate that as, you shall go forth with joy. I understood it, Ki b'simcha, when you have happiness, seitzeu, you can get out of anything. Now, I don't think he meant literally that happiness will get you out of any situation. It won't, but being happier will certainly help. No one can guarantee happiness, but there are things we can do to make ourselves happier. Now, lest you think that you should feel guilty about being happy in these terrible times, don't, because you will be a better parent, a better sibling, a better spouse, a better child, a better student, a better teacher, a better employer, a better employee if you are happier. You won't help anyone by being depressed. So, on the contrary, one of the ways we deal with this is making ourselves happier, helping ourselves to become and others to become happier. Ki b'simcha seitzeu, having happiness, Rav Simcha Bunim tells us, will change the demeanor. And you know what? When he injected some happiness into the mind of the guy in the river, then he says he changed from yi'ush to tikva, from despair to hope, from pessimism to optimism, and he saved himself. And that's the best that's one of the best things that we can do. And there are many techniques I'm not going to go into, but there are many techniques to make yourself happier. I'll just mention 3 very simple things to do, all of which are part of the Torah. Number 1, expressing gratitude on a regular basis. That's what brachas are. When we say a bracha and we appreciate what we have in that bracha, whether it's water to drink or the ability to walk or see or whatever, having shelter, having clothing, having family, having sunlight, etc., etc. UV radiation is meant to be good for the virus. But in any case, all of that stuff, when we say a bracha, we express that gratitude. Think about it. Think of 1 or 2 things a day. Think of maybe one thing even a day, and express gratitude out loud to Hashem for it. And express gratitude to other people. Helps with relationships. Don't take people for granted. Expressing gratitude will make you and everyone else around you happier. Number 2, doing acts of chesed, acts of kindness. Every act of reaching out, phoning someone who is alone, doing an act of kindness. When you do an act of kindness, yes, the beneficiary is the person who receives the kindness, but you are the greatest beneficiary of that kindness, because that will make you happier. That will give you the joy of doing something, because the neshama wants to give, because the neshama is like HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Hashem is the ultimate giver, the ultimate creator. Olam chesed yiboneh. The world was created for the purpose of giving, and so when we give, we experience joy. Third, the Rambam says exercise. Regular exercise, physical activity. Even if you're inside, there's lots of things you can do without a gym and without complicated equipment. And physical activity, exercise, actually, yes, it releases endorphins and it releases chemicals in the mind which actually make you happier. Legal drugs, no negative side effects, gives you a timeout, increases your health. Fantastic to make you happier. So that's number one, Reb Simcha Bunim of Shisra. Another idea that Reb Simcha Bunim mentions is, in these times, he says to have two pieces of paper in your pocket. He says, why does the Torah start with a base? Two pieces of paper. Everyone has to have two post-it notes. One which says, Anochi offer va'efer, I am dust and ashes. Now, why? Because humility, a sense of entitlement, a sense of arrogance makes life a lot harder to bear. If I have a sense of entitlement that I deserve, and magiali, as we say in Hebrew, I deserve, I should get, why this, etc., makes life very hard to deal with. If you have a sense of humility, that you know what, maybe it's not magia to me everything. Maybe I don't, right? A little humility is tremendously helpful. Now, a lot of people would have stopped with that piece of paper, I am dust and ashes. But Reb Simcha Bunim says you've got to have another piece of paper too. The other piece of paper says, Bishvili nivra ha'olam. The world was created for me. Because since Hashem created the world as with one human being, what that means is, the Maharal explains, that even for one human, the whole world could be worth it. And a person has to think of themselves as I am that one person. Who knows if the action of kindness that I do, if the tefillah, the prayer that I do, if the mitzvah that I do, if the learning of Torah that I do, whatever it happens to be, that could be it. That could be worth it. And so there's a tremendous empowerment in understanding that each one of us and every single action is incredibly powerful. And yes, there is ecology and ecosystems which are interconnected, but there's also a spiritual ecology in which all of us are interconnected by our actions, and the action of any one person, that second piece of paper, really important at these times to take out, to understand that however isolated I may be, incapacitated, there's always something I can do, think, say, pray, etc., that will have an impact on the world, on myself, etc. Now, an idea from a student, a Talmid of Reb Simcha Bunim Shisra, Rabbi Mordechai Yosef Leiner of Ishbitz, the Ishbitzer, very controversial, but this is not controversial what he says. He points out, it says, Bikesh Yaakov, it says, Vayeshev Yaakov. Yaakov wanted to sit. Yaakov sat and he wanted to dwell in quiet, and he wanted to be in tranquility. And Rashi tells us that HaKadosh Baruch Hu said to him, in this world, you cannot have tranquility. Bikesh Yaakov Leishev B'Shalva. Yaakov wanted to dwell in tranquility. And Rashi says that Hashem said to him, that's not going to happen now. That's going to happen in the days of the Mashiach. And the Ishbitzer says, we see from here a general principle about life. Life is not about tranquility. It's not about being static. On the contrary, a biological system in stasis is what we call dead. Life is about struggle. Life is about movement. Life is about progress. Life is about overcoming obstacles. That is the entire purpose of all of creation, was for us to exercise our free will, our bechira, and to overcome obstacles. And so don't say, how can life be so difficult? That is actually one of the purposes of our existence, is actually struggle, movement, progress. And actually, I should point out, my Rebbe, Rav Moshe Shapiro, always used to say that when you make progress, you'll actually be happier. Even now, if it's in something trivial, something unimportant, you'll still be happy. obviously, the more important the area is in which you make progress, the more significant the progress is, the happier you will be, because that is why the human being is here on this planet, is to make progress. The letters of Adam, human, Aleph, Dalet, Mem, are an anagram for the word me'od, very, to exceed, because the human being is meant to be me'od, to go beyond. Going beyond is only possible when there is effort, when there's struggle. As William James, the great psychologist from Harvard, said at the beginning of the 20th century, he said, violins only make good music when the strings are stretched. He says, same is true of humans. We only make really good music when we are stretched. It is interesting that an Israeli historian noted that there were hundreds of years where Italy, that is suffering now terribly under the coronavirus, but there were hundreds of years that Italy had plagues and warfare and political intrigue and assassinations and corruption. It was horrific. And during that time, they produced some of the greatest artists, Michelangelo and scientists, Leonardo da Vinci and Vivaldi and Dante, and great authors and poets and scientists and architects and artists. Unbelievable. During the same period of time, Switzerland had peace, tranquility, and democracy. They produced cuckoo clocks and chocolate. Now, I think chocolate's fantastic, but right, there's something to be said for tension. There's something to be said for struggle, which produces greatness, creativity, progress. And when we progress, we are happier. I've said this many times, again, from Rabbi Mordechai Shapiro, my Rebbe. This, the Gemara says, that's called a tefach, a handbreadth. But this is called a tefach atzuv, a sad tefach. This is a tefach soichek, meaning a happy or laughing tefach. When the level, the measure is level, that's called midah atzuva, a sad measure. When it's overflowing, that's called midah sochekes, a laughing measure. When we have gone beyond the confines of our past, of our mistakes, of our averos, of our relationships, etc., and we extend beyond where we were, we experience happiness, even if it's painful, even if the progress takes a lot of effort. But there's a tremendous joy in going beyond, making progress, getting out of the container, so to speak, getting beyond the vessel. That we can do. And that is, he says, Bikesh Yaakov Leisha B'Shalva. Yaakov wanted to sit in tranquility. That's not what life is about. A third point I need to stress, also from the Ishbitzer, which is slightly controversial, but not terrible. He says the following. This is in the Me'ah Shilach, and Parshas told us. He asked the question, why did Yitzchak love Esav? To all intents and purposes, Esav seems to be somewhat of a thug. He's basically, he's a hunter, he's cunning. Yaakov is the Ben Torah. He's sitting in the tents of Torah. He's learning Ishtam, Yosef, Ohalim. Esav, Yodea Tzayid, Ish Sadeh, a man who hunts, a man of the field. So you can imagine Yaakov comes to Yitzchak and he says, Tati, because obviously they spoke Yiddish. He says, Tati, I finished the Masechta. And Yitzchak says, yeah, that's great. Yeah, Esav comes in and he says, I bench pressed 200 pounds today. Yitzchak says, oi, Esav, come here, Bubala. Right. Does that make any sense? It's very strange. So the Ishbitzer says, you know what Yitzchak saw in Esav? He saw that he was adventurous. He saw that he was a risk taker. He saw that he pushed the envelope. And he said, he sees all of those things showed that, now he was, as we know, wrong. Esav was in fact a fake, as Rivka understood with her Ruach HaKodesh. However, he says, but what was the Hava Amina? What did Yitzchak indeed see in Esav? That had he been correct, these would have been good qualities. He says, yes, the quality of being a little adventurous, the quality of being somewhat of a risk taker. The Ishbitzer tells us in our life, in our Ruchnius, in our Torah mitzvahs, also same thing, meaning we should be somewhat adventurous. Here's a time you never learnt Chassidus before, even if you're a Litvak, now's the time. Look into the Chassidus. You're Chassidish, look at the Gra on Mishlei. Now is a great time. You never learnt Gemara before, never learnt Daf Yom before. Now try that. Right, you never learned Chumash Be'iyun, you're a little afraid of the Ramban or the Ibn Ezra, a little too complex, try it. You never did Karlbach davening. Now's the time. You can sing to your heart's content. No one's going to criticize you. It's just the people in your house. So try it. Right? Zmiras. Do a Sephardi Zmira. Do a Yekish Zmira. Do a Litvish. Are there Litvish Zmiras? I don't know. But whatever. Do something like that. A little adventure, a little, so to speak, pushing the envelope of your comfort zone is very good for you. And finally, something from Rav Nachman of Breslov, and also from the words of the Ramchal. The Ramchal wrote it's not a sefer, it's only really one page, and it's called Drush al Hakivui, the drosha on hope. The Ramchal tells us the single most important word in the Hebrew language is tikva, which is hope. He says the person who believes in Hashem always has hope, because that person understands that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has a plan. That person understands that, yes, I have to do my hishtadlus, I have to do my efforts, I have to stay at home, I have to wash my hands frequently, etc., etc. But he understands that even though he's taking care of an 88% probability that he'll be okay, but the other 12%, he totally understands it's up to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And he says the person with tikva never gives up hope. Rav Nachman of Breslov had an extraordinarily difficult life. When a rabbi who is healthy and wealthy and has a wonderful family and stability tells me, don't give up hope, I take it with a grain of salt. I might say easy for him to say. Rav Nachman of Breslov lost his wife and child to typhoid, to tuberculosis. He was driven out of his town where he lived by both Jewish and non-Jewish enemies. He travels to Uman, a place which he felt was holy because there were thousands of Jewish victims of the Haidemek massacres buried there. His house gets burnt down by enemies. He's persecuted by Jews and non-Jews alike. He contracts tuberculosis. He dies at a young age of 30. What a life. But you know what? If you do a search through the writings of Rav Nachman of Breslov, you will find that the most common phrase in his writings is Lo lehisyaesh, don't give up hope. And the Ramchal tells us, he wrote a book called Tiktu Tfilos, 515 Tfilos. Every tefillah begins with the phrase Kel Echad Yochid Umiyuchad, Hashem, who is one, the only one, and uniquely one. And every one of the tefillos ends with the phrase Lishu Oscha Kivisi Hashem. Hashem, I hope for your salvation. He says, because the one who understands that Hashem is Echad Yochid Umiyuchad, the only force in this world, the only power, the unique power, then that person will always end with Lishu Oscha Kivisi Hashem. I trust in you, in your hope, and in your salvation. And tikva, the word tikva, the middle letters are the word kav, which means a line. If you look in Sefer Yeshua, Rachav is told by the spies to tie a thread to her window so the Jewish army will not destroy her house and kill her family. The word used for the thread that she ties to the window to ensure life, tikvas hashani. Tikvas hashani. Tikva means a thread. In this case, it's a thread of hope, literally. And the word tikva from the word kav, line, because what connects me to the future? What connects me to Yeshua? What connects me to that is the kav, is the line of tikva, of hope. Similar, the Kalavar Rebbe said, when you lose something and I find it, I have to give it back to you. Now, why? The object is not in your possession. The object is not in your property. The object is not under your control. What connects you to the object that I found? What connects you to this object that makes it yours? The answer is, he said, the kav, the line of hope that you'll get it back. The hope that a Jew will find it, an honest person will find it and return it to you. That hope is the line that connects you to the object that you lost. Tikva, kav, tikvas, hashani. And as Jews, we have had tikva for thousands of years. Those hopes have not been disappointed. We have returned to our land. We have a revival of Torah. We have Jews returning to Yiddishkeit, to Torah, to Judaism, etc. We are still around. We are not just surviving, we're alive and kicking. That's an amazing hope. That's a line that stretches back thousands of years and will stretch into bringing us to the time of the Mashiach. My father, Alav Shalom, his yortzeit was yesterday, Rosh Chodesh Nisan. I have his talus bag that was embroidered by his mother back in Poland in the early 20th century when he became bar mitzvah. And he put on those tefillin every day. And that bag, that tefillin, has got the word Sion that his mother embroidered on it. And I look at that and I say, she had hope of Sion, that the Jews would return to Zion. And you know what? I say to myself, that's amazing, because my father, Olav Shalom, has children who are connected to Torah, has grandchildren living in Sion, has great-grandchildren living in Sion in Eretz Yisrael. He has children around the world who are connected to each other, connected to Sion. And every Jew who has had hope throughout history, we are the fulfillment of that hope. So we have to live up to that. But we also ourselves have to have that tikvah. And that, Rav Nachman says, he says that is how to avoid depression. That is how to avoid hopelessness. That is how to avoid pessimism. And that is how to cling to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He says, because the main barrier between us and HaKadosh Baruch Hu is depression, atzvus, sadness, what he calls mara shchoira, sadness. And indeed, the greatest link, the kav that connects me not just to the future, not just to the Yeshua, to the redemption, but that connects me to HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the kav, is the line of tikva. That is, I think, one of the great messages bringing me back to Rav Simcha Bunim, which is even in uncertainty, even in that river carrying us down the river, there is still hope, there is still Yeshua, Kroiva, Lavoi, and that is the idea, Lishuoscha Kivisi Hashem, that Hashem will bring us to the ultimate redemption on a personal level, on a national level, on a universal level, B'mehera B'yameinu.